Hey, so picture this. You're walking through a grid of streets, perfectly laid out, north-south, east-west. You've got a sophisticated drainage system running under your feet, with manhole covers for maintenance. Your house is made of uniformly sized baked bricks, and you have a private bathroom that connects to that main sewer. You live in one of the largest cities of your time, a metropolis of perhaps 40,000 people. Life is orderly, trade is flourishing, and there's no sign of palaces, giant temples, or grand tombs for kings. This isn't a modern planned suburb. This was Mohenjo-daro. This was the Indus Valley Civilization over 4,000 years ago, and then it was gone. Hey, welcome back. I'm Ibnul J. Farabi, and this is Empire Builders, the rise and fall of civilizations from light, not studios. In our last episode, we talked about foundations. Today, we're diving into one of history's most captivating mysteries. Episode 2, The Indus Enigma, Why a Thriving Civilization Vanished. We know the basics. From around 2600 to 1900 BCE, the Indus Valley Civilization, also called the Harappan culture, thrived across what is now Pakistan and northwest India. It was contemporary with ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, arguably more extensive than both. They had standardized weights and measures, a still undeciphered script, and that incredible, almost modern urban planning. They were the ultimate empire builders of the Indian subcontinent. And then, by about 1900 BCE, the lights in the big cities began to go out. Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, all the great urban centers were abandoned. The question that has haunted archaeologists and historians for a century is simple. Why? What could possibly cause such a coherent, widespread society to simply unravel? For a long time, the favorite culprit was invasion. The old theory pointed to the arrival of nomadic groups from the north, the so-called Aryans, mentioned in later texts. The idea was a violent conquest of cities put to the torch. But the archaeology just doesn't support a dramatic, fiery end. There's no evidence of large-scale destruction layers at Mohenjo-daro or Harappa that scream war. No piles of skeletons in the streets from a final battle. The decline appears to have been a process, a slow fading, not a sudden, violent smash. So if it wasn't a war, what was it? Let's talk about water, the lifeblood of any agricultural society. The Indus people were masters of hydraulic engineering, but they were also prisoners of their geography. Their entire civilization was built around a river system, not just the Indus, but also the Ghaggar-Hakra River, which many scholars believe was the mighty Sarasvati described in later Indian texts. And here's where climate science comes in. Paleoclimatology, the study of ancient climates, gives us a crucial clue. Around 2200 BCE, a major global climate event occurred. Monsoon patterns that fed these rivers began to shift. The Ghaggar-Hakra started to dry up, becoming seasonal, then disappearing into the desert. The Indus itself became unpredictable, prone to devastating floods. Imagine the foundation of your entire society, your water supply, your crop irrigation, your trade routes, becoming first unreliable and then vanishing. You'd have to move. And that's exactly what the evidence suggests. We see a gradual depopulation of the massive cities in the core region and a shift of smaller communities eastward, toward the Ganges River basin. It was a slow-motion disaster, a centuries-long drought that eroded the economic and agricultural base of the civilization. But an empire isn't just bricks and water, it's a network, a system of connections. And that brings me to the second major factor, the breakdown of complexity. The Indus civilization was incredibly integrated. Those uniform bricks and weights found over 1 million square kilometers tell us there was a remarkable cultural and perhaps administrative unity. This allowed for long-distance trade, not just internally, but with Mesopotamia. But when the environmental stress hit, this complex system became a liability. As the river networks failed, trade routes were disrupted. The authority that maintained those standards, whoever they were, priests, elders, a merchant class, began to lose their legitimacy. Why follow the rules if the rules no longer bring you water or goods? We see this in the archaeological record. In the later layers of the cities, the famous uniformity breaks down. People start building with different, non-standard materials. They build partitions in the grand public baths, like they're subdividing a hall. The meticulous grid of streets gets encroached upon. It's a picture of a society where the central idea, the organizing principle, is losing its grip. The grand, collective project was falling apart, reverting to local, smaller-scale survival. Now, here's where I have to pause and offer a personal reflection. As an engineer, I look at the Indus and I see a breathtaking systems design. That sewer system? It's elegant problem-solving. But as an entrepreneur, I see something else. I see a cautionary tale about scalability and fragility. They built a system perfectly adapted to a specific, stable environment. When that environment changed beyond a certain threshold, the system couldn't pivot fast enough. Their strength, their incredible standardization and integration, became their rigidity. There's a lesson in there for any builder, whether you're building a city, a company, or a community. Resilience isn't just about being strong at your peak. It's about having the flexibility to adapt when the world you were built for disappears. So, did the Indus civilization truly vanish? That's the final, and perhaps most important, twist in the story. We've been talking about the collapse of a civilization, that specific, urban, complex state. But the people didn't vanish. They didn't just disappear into thin air. The decline of the cities was not an extinction event. What we see is a transformation, a deurbanization. People moved east and south. They took their knowledge, their technologies, their seeds, their animals, and their stories with them. They became smaller, more rural communities. Many of the cultural elements of the Indus, like ritual bathing, certain artistic motifs, maybe even early forms of yoga, likely percolated into the fabric of the subcontinent, influencing the cultures that followed. The civilization as a singular entity fell, but its legacy was assimilated. It became part of the soil of India. The Enigma isn't a disappearance, it's a metamorphosis. So, the next time you see a perfectly planned city grid, or use a standardized measurement, think of the Indus Valley. Think of the builders who, from millennia ago, achieved something so orderly it still feels modern. And remember that their story teaches us that empires fall not always with a bang, but often with a slow retreat of water, a gradual breaking of bonds, and a quiet migration toward new horizons. Their world ended, but in doing so, it helped seed a future one. Thank you for listening to this episode of Empire Builders. If this journey into the past resonated with you, please share the show with a friend and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. For more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world, visit our producers at Light Not Studios. https://www.lightnotstudios.com. I'm Ibnul J. Farabi. Until next time, keep building.